Never underestimate the power of
Alan!
Welcome to the first edition of Teaching Teemo Tuesday, where I'll try to teach you a certain topic that you guys chose. For disclosure, I've been thinking about whether I want to go full-time with this. And in February, I might try going full-time and seeing how it works. And I know that the current content that I produce is not good enough. So I thought, how can I give you guys better content? And well, I'm partly an educational streamer. And I decided I want to make more prepared content. And I want to put more effort in my content. So I prepared a PowerPoint for you. My plan is every Tuesday, based on your feedback, I will talk about some topic of your choice. Since this is the first week, you guys weren't able to vote yet on what topic to choose. I think in the future I will do it based on most liked YouTube content comment. I might do that topic, or I already asked on Teemo Talk, where on Teemo Talk there were a bunch of different topics that I can just talk about. For today, I prepared, again, this is a GIF. I prepared a PowerPoint and I prepared 3 topics for you. I prepared 3 topics and I called them Teemo Basics, where I give a holistic overview over Teemo as a champion and I talk about him at its core and what you should be doing. Then I have Teemo Matchups, where people always ask, what do you do against certain types of champions? Well, I prepared what should you do when you play against an all-in champion. And then finally, I wanted something specifically for Teemo. We could also call it Shroom of the Week. I want to show you good shrooming locations, and then I actually want to show you video clips of how that shroom was used and how you can use it to your advantage. Let's start with the first topic. When is Teemo actually strong, and what the fuck is a power spike? Power spikes are basically exactly what the question says. They are when you are strong compared to someone else. So a traditional power spike that is very easy to understand is that when you are level 2 and the other enemy is level 1. You have 1 more ability than him, so you have double his abilities. So when you are level 2, any champion can go for an engage and has a power spike, since he has 1 more ability. Then another power spike that you might think of is obviously your ultimate, level 6, 11, 16. Now for some champions it is a big power spike, like for Gwen, but there's also some champions where it's not such a big power spike, like Quinn or something. So for Teemo, level 6, 11 and 16, ever since they changed his ult, is definitely a power spike. And then for a lot of champions, their first completed item is a power spike, since they get a very nice stat check. So that would, for example, again be Gwen or any champion that runs Ravenous right now. Once they complete it, they are way stronger. Now, power spikes are always relative. So even though you are strong, if someone else is strong, you might not necessarily have a power spike. One example for that is, if you finish Nashor's and Ornn finishes Jack Show, in comparison, Ornn is actually stronger. When you are level 13 and you guys both have those items, Ornn is comparatively stronger than at level 7, where both of you didn't have an item. So even though technically finishing an item is a power spike, if the other person also finishes a power spike that is equally strong, it's kind of useless. So some champions need a certain item to get to go over some threshold. As I said, like Ravenous Hunter, or like Gwen is the biggest one. Once she has 2 items, 1 item, 3 items, every time she finishes an item, she gets way stronger. But Teemo is not necessarily like that. So how is it for Teemo? Teemo power spikes at level 2, I would say, because most champions at this stage of the game, most champions can't really 1v1 you, and you usually win. Then at level 9, for example, when you're against Ryze or something, yeah, Ryze does heavily beat you, but you do have a lot of damage. So at around level 9, you can often look for fights. Then level 11 and level 16 are also power spikes, because your ult becomes significantly stronger. And especially at level 11, it starts one-shotting waves, and at level 16, it actually becomes very strong, because you can start really zoning people and getting wards from way away. And even though it doesn't sound that strong, it's actually very good, which means that Teemo is one of the best scaling champions in the game. So what is not a Teemo Power Spike? The first completed item is not really a Power Spike for Teemo. You actually often see me rush boots and then get an Oblivion Orb and then get a QSS. And by the time I get Nashers or Riftmaker, like I've already built like 5 different items. I'm often full build by having built a bunch of components by like level 7. That's not how a bunch of other champions work. Like for example, Graves might go magical boots and he goes longsword and then he goes what's called Hydra as fast as possible. Some champions try to rush an item. Teemo doesn't really try to do that. You can delay your first item by a good like 3000 gold and still be completely fine. In fact, in a lot of matchups, I advise going boots first. Teemo actually has a power throat, a moment when he's pretty weak from level 12 to 15, where you can definitely still be pretty strong, but a lot of champions start being able to 1v1 you and start being pretty scary, and it can get a lot harder to 1v2. As I'll talk about later, that is pretty awkward because you are level 12 to 15 for a long part of the game. Another part that people might not necessarily realize is that from level 3 to 5, you are somewhat weaker. A lot of champions get a lot stronger when they get their 3 abilities and a few points in their most important ability. So an example for that would, for example, be Fiora, where when she has all 3 skills, she becomes a lot stronger than just at level 1. Or Aatrox, where once he has all 3 abilities, he's generally still weaker than you, but he's stronger in comparison to level 1. So you're not necessarily weak at those moments, but a lot of champions get better 1v1 potential. I have visualized that. I don't know if that's the next slide. Yeah. I've done a perfect visualization here. Level 1 to 3, you're usually pretty decently strong in the lane. This is power over time. And with power, I mean relative power to your enemy. You can take the power from level 1 to 3 as your baseline where you're pretty strong. So level 4 to 5, you can often become weaker and you need to be careful. And then level 6, you spike. You start scaling a bit until you're level 9, where your E becomes really good. Then at level 11, you get your level 2 shrooms, so you're very strong at this point. And then you have the problem. From level 12 to 15, you're just not that strong until you suddenly start scaling like crazy again. And you can kind of see this on this win rate by game length graph, where you can see that I'm not just making this shit up. Yeah, they kind of look the same. The thing is, like a 52% win rate is good, so most of the time in the early game, Teemo wins, but then this section, like 20 minutes to 30 minutes, it is a bit awkward, where if the game ends between level 12 and 15, like you're just not that strong. So we need a sort of a way to deal with medium length games. Jesus. Because like short games, you're pretty strong. Basically, if you have a short game, that means that, right, you just stomped lane and you win the game. If you have a long game, that means that you got level 16 and further and you outscaled them. But what do you do in the mid game? I wanted to show this graph and visualize the power spikes, because a lot of what the series will talk about is how to play Teemo in the mid game. There were a lot of comments and a lot of people who asked, what do I do in the mid game? I always lose. And I see that it's a big problem for a lot of people, so I might need multiple weeks to talk about it. But in this first instance, I wanted to show you that I agree the mid game is difficult and the data also backs it up. But so now we have a pretty big problem where we have the most important phase of the game, right? Mid-game teamfights, which also coincidentally happens to be the weakest phase of the game. By the way, it's what do I do? How do I adapt? So yeah, the question then becomes, if we are so weak in the mid game, what do you do? And how do you adapt to that? How do you win the mid game? Well, I will offer 2 solutions. First of all, the recommended way to get through the mid game is something that someone in chat says. Yes, you start the game mid game 5-0. A lot of games, if you're just ahead, it doesn't matter that statistically you're weaker in the mid game. Like, if you are level 12 and he is level 10, then it doesn't really matter, right? It doesn't matter. So that's one way. And accomplishing this, so being ahead in XP and gold, you make that by winning lane and then staying inside lane until you're level 16. So this is actually my recommended playstyle for all of you. I will go more in depth in later weeks, but because Teemo's mid game is kind of bad, you want to build on your laning skills to build an advantage, and then just push this advantage on the side lane over and over until you're level 16, and then you join the mid-late game teamfights. In my opinion, in everything under Master pretty much, you shouldn't be joining teamfights too much. In high elo, you can't do that because the games are gonna be over by the time. People are very good at snowballing, so the game is gonna be over by the time I reach level 16 most of the time. In low elo, the games are longer, so you can get this level 16 phase quite reliably. What I do is I recommend you guys to go PTA, Riftmaker, and Nashers, right? And it actually has the higher win rate with a very decent pick rate. So I'm not like talking out of my ass. My recommendation is actually good. Going Nashers and Riftmaker is an easy build that is good on the side lane and that works with my recommended playstyle. But it doesn't necessarily work for my elo. So I want to explain why you see me go Landry so much. I go Landry so much because if you want to fight, it gives a lot of advantages. What are these advantages? Well, first of all, you have endless mana, so you never need to base. So if you have stupid fights over and over, you need to run from one lane to the other, you never have time to base. There you go, you have the mana to deal with it. They buffed Teemo's mana management, but it's still not, like, you can't still run Landry's guarantees that you have mana. Also, it always basically guarantees that you will have enough wave clear to deal with waves. Since you get it in the mid game by level 11, you just throw a shroom into the wave, and no matter what items you have and how far you are behind, you can just clear the wave, which is harder with Riftmaker in my experience. Then Landry is just a very nice one item spike where you can sit on that item forever, and it doesn't matter that you didn't finish another item. If you just fight over and over, it's still going to provide you value. In my experience, when you go Riftmaker, it feels pretty bad to sit on the Riftmaker and to delay your Nashers, your Zhonyas, your Void Staff over and over. In my opinion, when you go Riftmaker, you want to keep extending your own gold lead by going through a side lane, which then allows you to build more items. But if I think, oh, I'm only gonna get one item or two items this game, then I'd rather sit on Landry in the mid to late game than on Riftmaker. And finally, I like to adapt my build to the current game, and you can plug Landry into any build. So Landry plus Zhonya is a lot more chill in my opinion to play than Riftmaker and Zhonya. For one, you get pretty quickly with Riftmaker and Zhonya, and it just feels, the damage feels a little low. In my experience with Landry and Zhonya, you feel quite a lot better. One caveat to all of this is that I like to play fleet footwork. So even though I give up a lot of the sustain from Riftmaker, I still get sustain from fleet footwork, so I'm allowed to build Landry. If you wonder why I go Landry so often in my games, this is the answer. But I still recommend you guys to go Riftmaker, even though it's not what I play. I hope my explanation makes sense. So, for the second part, a lot of people asked, what do you do against all-in champs? So I made the holy trifecta of Riven, Darius, and Garen, who just wanna all-in you and run you over. And then the question is, oh man, what do I do? What should I play against them? Another example would be, for example, Akali, right? That all-ins at level 6. So even though it's a holy trinity here, there's actually a lot more champions that just wanna all-in you at level 6. So It's actually very easy what you do against it. I hope the colors are not too bright. It's simple. You either run or you fight. Now, Ipa, the most popular Teemo content creator, he does the left thing very often. He goes phase rush and ghost and runs away. In my opinion, that is the wrong playstyle. In my opinion, you should be going Ignite and PTA into most all any champions, and you should fight them. First of all, it gives you a lot more agency. So with agency, I mean, if you go aggressive, you have the option to actually win lane instead of just not lose lane. And you can push your advantage and just win the game through snowballing. When you run, I feel like you're just coin flipping into having the better team. And over like 100 games, you will have worse results. Because you're not really accomplishing anything. And sure, you're not feeding the enemy Darius, but I would argue that most all-in champions, so Garen, Riven, Darius, Akali, if you know how to play it, you actually win the 1v1. So it can be difficult. I recommend you to do it. Also because you just learn how to play the game better. If you just go phase rush and you're always playing super scared against Darius and always being way out of his E range, you're not really gonna improve as a player and climb in rank. Going PTA Ignite forces you to fight him. It forces you to stay just barely out of his E range and to learn how to kite and how to space him and how not to get caught by it. Even if he catches you, you can still win that 1v1, by the way. But in my opinion, going aggressive actually teaches you the matchup better. And then by being better, you win the matchup more often and you climb in rank. I generally don't recommend this whole left side shenanigans. I hope that makes sense. If you have a different opinion there, then go ahead. Now you might say, okay, just fight. Like, right, that's not a lot of advice. This teaching Teemo Tuesday sucks. Well, I want to give you some general advice for when they all in you. All of it is a bit obvious maybe, but if you do it combined, then you should usually not lose the lane. So the thing that all of these all-in champions have in common, so Garen, Darius, Akali, etc., is that they have executes. That means the lower you are, the more damage they deal. So the logical conclusion is you want to have as much life as possible at the end of the trade, so that the execute doesn't execute it. When they all in you, or even before they all in you, you always want to take potions so that you are close to full HP. And if they all in you, you always want a potion to be running. I very often noticed when I was coaching other players that they're not using the potion, and then they die. And with that potion, they would live. So make sure to pay attention to that. And then, if you just poke someone as much as possible, they might go too low and then they can never all in you. And if a Riven is at half HP and can never all in you, then she's suffering because, right, you can just do whatever you want. That's one thing about those champions. They have a scary all in, but if they can't all in, then you can just do whatever you want. If the all in is unavoidable, you want to be fighting in your minion wave. During the lane, minions deal a lot of damage. So fighting in your own minion wave is pretty important. One thing that I would also add is you want to ignite people early, because when they go on you, they are reaching a lot of HP during the fight. They're also popping their potion. They're stacking up Conqueror. They might have healing abilities like Darius Q. So you usually want to ignite early to get as much ignite damage out as possible and to reduce healing as much as possible. So getting them low early is actually a big part, because if you get the Darius to 20 HP early, then he will be forced to ult early as well. And if he's forced to ult early as well, you might not be as low HP yet. Igniting early often makes sure that you actually win the trade. Then, since their champions are based on all-inning, you want to take lane runes, which help you in the lane. So Bone Plating and Taste of Blood, sometimes both, sometimes neither, depends on your preference. And the final part, if you know that they're gonna all in you, why not build stat check items? So in a lot of these all-in champions, like for example Akali, it's not necessarily in your best interest to rush boots, even though dodging her Qs is nice, because you know that she could just land everything anyways. So you want to go Ruby Crystal and Negatron Cloak, for example, against Akali. Oftentimes I'm going to go Dark Seal because the Dark Seal gives me 40 HP. Although boots are cool, of course, against a Garen or something, a lot of the times you just have to assume that they're going to hit everything. And if they hit everything, then you want to have as much armor, MR, and HP as possible. Because in the early game, those have higher value than going any damage. Because again, your main priority in an all-in is to stay healthy. Killing them is cool, of course, but you also want to stay healthy so that they can't execute you. So I hope all of these make sense to you. There's one person in the chat asking how many custom minions is it worth to tank in order to get AS off level 1. I would say, first of all, if you use bushes correctly, you should barely take any custom minion damage. But if you took as much damage as the enemy while not denying any CS, then it's usually not worth it, because most champions have higher base regen, and with second wind, door, and shield, they heal more when they are low. So it is only worth it if you deny minions, Mr. Ubans. Okay, and I wanted to show an example here with an own YouTube video. I'm gonna mute it. Where, first of all, as you can see, I'm following all of my own advice. I'm not making this shit up. I have PTA, I have bone plating, and even though bone plating has done nothing so far, the important part is that it helps in the all-in. I've already pre-poked her down so that her all-in is weaker, and I went in Amp Tome, but I was winning lanes, so I thought I don't need too much defensiveness. I went Ruby Crystal Dark Shield, so I have another like 200 HP in this fight. So then I actually get ganked here, but I make sure to have a big minion wave. I see the Kha'Zix here. I make sure to kill as many minions as possible so that when Kha'Zix and Riven engage onto me, I have as many minions as possible. So you can see I'm following my own advice in runes, in items, and in clearing the wave. So then, when Riven goes in, I can already see there that she's going in on me. I place a shroom early on me. That is actually another thing that you guys can learn. I actually put my cam over my own face cam here for a second. If you know that they're gonna go in on you, throw your shroom on yourself. You can also see the exact second that she goes in on me, I pop my pot and I ignite her. So then she goes in and she barely deals any damage because I'm doing all of this, and she has to back off because I'm in my minion wave. And then I'm level 7 against level 4 Kha'Zix. I'm spacing here because she still has ult. And I kill him. And there are definitely ways for me to die in that moment. But because I followed all of my steps correctly, subscribe by the way, I won that all in. So I hope this helps you to understand how you should be playing against all-in champions. So this is the shroom of the week, by the way. I want to show you a classic shroom location, which is this one, that I coincidentally used in a recent video against the boss for fuck's sake. And this shroom killed the boss for fuck's sake. So if it kills him, you can do it too. This location is very special. You can see my cursor, right? Because if you put it further to the right, no one is ever gonna step into it. If you push it further to the top, then people might run by it. So this location is very good when you think that you're about to fight someone. Usually the minions don't trigger this, but you can manipulate the minions in a way that they do trigger it, and the enemy will often be very surprised. So this specific shroom location is very, very useful. And for that, I prepared the video, where at this point this is just muscle memory for me. He actually sees that shroom, but he forgets about it. So here we fight a bit, we fight a bunch. Might not have taken the best trade. He's kind of outplaying me. And here, I almost kill him here when he walks into that shroom. But because I walk towards him, he starts walking back. I should have actually not walked towards him, then he would have walked into that. So here I proc my fleet footwork. And Yeah, I'm saying I'm trying to make him walk into the shroom. I'm walking up so that he walks down. You know, he doesn't want to walk into me, so he walks down. But if he walks down, he walks into the shroom. So it's really, really awkward for him. And eventually... Well, he walks into it by himself. I was planning on walking like this and forcing him to walk into the shroom. Eventually, that shroom explodes and he dies. So, this shroom, no cap, by the way, yeah, bad movement by me there, is very useful. It has got me a lot of kills. A lot of the time, people will run away or also go for a ward and they will walk into that shroom. So I hope that you remember this shroom location and that you can use it in your own games. And I feel like if I tell you a story... Okay, this is the end. If I tell you a story of why the shroom is so good every week, you will remember it better. You will understand why the shroom is so good. So next week I'd like to show you other shroom locations and how I use that shroom to win. But that was it on my part. I hope I was understandable, even if I was ranting sometimes. And for the YouTube people, please tell me questions if you didn't understand something. And if you have feedback suggestions with the camera, with the chat, where I should put it, if I should put them off or not. I'm willing to listen. Finally, if you have topic suggestions, I will definitely take a very good look at the most liked YouTube comment. For the next week, I guess I can't do it because this video is gonna come out next week. But then for week 3, I will check the YouTube comments and potentially talk about that. I think next week I will talk more about the mid game, how to split push, when to split push, and yeah, I think that's something that all of you need a lot of advice on. But for now, this was it for me, and I hope you enjoyed teaching Teemo Tuesday. Yay!
Never underestimate the power of the Scouts code. 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 2, 3, 4. Scouts code. Code. 2, 3, 4. Yes, sir.